Facebook, please stand by. We will have our technical issues sorted out in just a couple seconds. Good morning and welcome to today's 20-minute update, Baltimore Community Foundation's monthly series of interactive calls and Facebook live streams to give you an inside look at BCF, our initiatives, and the work that we do in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and the entire region. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kevin Griffin Moreno, and joining me today is Melissa Warlow, Director of the William G. Baker Jr. Memorial Fund at BCF. Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning.
Before we get started, I want to thank our Civic Leadership Fund donors for their support. It's because of you that BCF can provide resources like this 20-minute update. So if you haven't made your Civic Leadership gift, please feel free to do so after our call this morning. For a decade now, the William G. Baker Jr. Memorial Fund of the Baltimore Community Foundation has promoted a lively, diverse, and exciting arts and culture sector in Baltimore and the surrounding area. Through its awards and grants, it has supported the careers of local artists, increased the effectiveness of arts organizations, and helped provide vital cultural experiences that enrich lives and strengthen our region's sense of cohesion and identity. Now, over the years, the Baker Fund has awarded nearly $900,000 in prizes to 90 artists, producing groundbreaking work in film, literature, music, performance, visual media, multidisciplinary art. Baker's also hosted nearly 4,000 local artist portfolios and granted hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants to build the capacity of nonprofit arts groups. So Melissa, it's been 10 years since the Baker Artist Portfolio and Awards program began. And Baker is part of a larger arts ecosystem in Baltimore that's incredibly exciting and diverse and provocative and also challenged. How does the Baker Artist Awards program fit into the overall fund priorities and the greater Baltimore arts universe as a whole?
Well, Kevin, as you know, about in 2007, 11 years ago, the Baker Fund started focusing on arts alone, and we knew we had to keep a lot of balls in the air in that realm. There's so many dynamic parts, and they are challenged, as you said. So we clearly were going to support the majors, the legacy organizations. We were going to support the mid-size organizations and help them with their capacity to be strong organizations, and we wanted to sort of help the emerging startup organizations get stronger and become a bigger part of our community. But we also knew that there were a lot of artists out there who were underserved, underfunded, and underappreciated. So from the first moment that we started being focused on the arts, we also started thinking about what we could do for artists. We concluded that we did want to give a prize to support the careers of our excellent artists, but we also knew that there were many more goals we wanted to achieve with that. We wanted to put a spotlight on all of our artists, not just the winners. We wanted to promote our neighbors knowing who our artists are. And we wanted to see if we could raise the profile of all our artists across the nation and internationally. But beyond that, we also wanted to send a message that Baltimore is a city that really does value their artists. And we would ultimately love artists who are looking for a new home to consider this city.
So there are really a couple of different sides to the fund. The first is strengthening arts organizations,
Yes.
as you mentioned, at these various tiers, and the other is promoting the work of individual artists and
Right.
attracting new artists. Can you give me an example of one of those smaller nonprofit arts organizations that people might not be familiar with that has been helped by Baker?
Well, we certainly helped Single Carrot Theater from the very inception, trying to stay with it and helping it grow. It's a very difficult process. You get to some plateau and it's not clear that funders are going to stick with you. So we've been always responsive in giving them money for planning and money for new staff to sort of encourage them to have new audiences, new donors, build their capital.
And in terms of the artists, the individual artists, Baker hosts their portfolios online.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how you settled on an online format to display artist portfolios.
Well, it's when we were tossing around these multiple goals we had, which was beyond the artist prize money. It was at a time when digital was really becoming huge, and we knew it was going to be big, and we thought, why not try this online? And we had a wonderful company here who designed our website, which won a Webby that year. It was pretty cool. And so we decided to go with that format because it was available to all artists, it was easy to use, and it was easy for people to access. Basically, that's it.
So it sounds like there's been a lot of experimentation and evolution of the fund over the years. What are some of the ways that it's changed or shifted course, changed focus?
It seems like it's changing course every minute of every year. We're always making modifications and adjustments to the website, to its use, to its promotion, to the prize money, and it's all dependent on what we think will get us sort of the biggest bang for our buck. We started off with 3 $25,000 prizes and a number of, I think, $1,000 prizes.
Right.
Now we're into having 6 $10,000 prizes, one in each discipline, and then the grand winner gets an extra $30,000. So we hope that will stimulate people to really incline them to sign up. Our best artists, get your work up there. You can win.
Looking back over the past 10 years, what are some of the standout artists? I know it's impossible to pick a favorite, but if you had to give a couple of examples of artists that people listening and watching should really know about in Baltimore, who are some of those people, and what's their work like?
Yes, it is hard to sort of pick one out. They've all been in their own way just magnificent. But one, I'd like to give a shout out to Carl Grubbs, one of our first winners, a musician, saxophonist. But every year he's taken it on as his sort of amazingly inclusive responsibility to present all the Baker artists, performing artists. And there's another event coming up in October. I'm not quite sure of the date, but it will happen at Baltimore Center Stage. But beyond that, John Rupert's career in sculpture, I think, sort of took off after he won. And in more recent years, we have Paul Rucker's incredible exhibition at the BMA that challenged our notions of justice. And then, of course, our most recent hometown girl, Joyce Scott, and how she was named a MacArthur Fellow after that Baker Award. Also, it should be said that Paul Rucker was a Guggenheim Fellow, named a Guggenheim Fellow after that.
And it's interesting, the examples of those two artists in particular. You have Paul Rucker, who is a relatively young man, who is, at the start of what promises to be this really exceptional career. As you say, challenging our notions of justice, really taking on issues of structural racism, and making that very apparent and provocative to art goers. And then you have Joyce Scott, who has been an institution in this town for decades, whose work has been exhibited at the BMA. I saw her perform at the Wind Up Space recently with a bunch of younger hip hop artists.
That must have been a hoot.
It was incredible. It was a transcendent moment. But she's somebody who has not until recently gotten the national recognition that she's deserved. So, it seems that Baltimore, in addition to supporting a really strong DIY art scene, it also seems to be a launching pad for real internationally known artists.
I think that's true, and I think because of our affordability and because this community is growing, I think they feel at home, the artists feel at home and can really blossom here. They really flower.
Yeah. So real quick, are there any special things going on for the 10th anniversary of the Baker Fund, the awards?
There will be. There's one coming up right away that's not exactly the 10th anniversary, but we will be on Monday, September 25 at Baltimore Center Stage, having our usual reception for our winners. Everyone's invited. We hope you'll come. They will be performing, and there'll be food and drink, and you can congratulate the winners. In 2018, when we will have our 10th set of winners, you can be sure we'll be bringing people together in a big way then.
Great. Um, Before we open it up to questions, I'm interested in your take on. We've talked about what's great about Baltimore's arts ecosystem, how it exists in these various different tiers. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what some of the challenges are, because I know that there are real challenges that artists at all and arts organizations at all levels face.
Well, I know you're an expert on this as well. You should be answering this question besides asking it. But clearly, in Baltimore, we don't have the clientele, or we don't have the residents who can purchase and support these organizations like many other cities do, many other big metropolitan cities. So there's a lack of financial support for the institutions. But I think also this goes back to sort of the divisiveness in our society today. But it's hard to get a diverse audience at any one time, and it's hard for people to develop diverse audiences. And maybe that's partly related to programming, but we've got to find a way to bring people together through the arts, which is where I believe its strongest point is. So
Yeah, I really see the arts as being one of the few areas of civic life that really has the potential to bring people together from across geographic, class, and racial boundaries in a very immediate way.
yes.
So I think that I agree that there's a lot of promise there. I'm also interested, since you have this long career of supporting arts organizations, what, in your opinion, are some of the most important ingredients for especially a smaller arts organization to have if it wants to sustain itself over time? Because we have a lot of organizations that are doing exceptional work, but which struggle with capacity and sustainability issues.
Right. It seems that all organizations are dependent on their leadership. That's always key. But it also seems to me that a lot of these organizations are looking to their own great artistic work and failing to realize that they're going to have to bring donors along on that ride, because otherwise how are they going to sustain themselves over time? And the foundations cannot do that. We can help you get there, but we're not going to take on that burden so you have to sell your tickets, and you have to sell the idea that you're worth supporting charitably.
That's an important point. Thank you. So we're going to open the call up to questions. If you've dialed in today, you can press *6 now to unmute yourself and ask a question. After you finish asking the question, press *6 again to mute your line. And if you're following our live stream on Facebook, simply ask a question in the comments of the video. You can also tweet a question. Our hashtag is 20MinuteUpdate. And we have one question from our Facebook live stream, which is, how do people submit their work to Baker, and what is the application process and deadlines?
So there is no application to Baker Fund or the Artist Awards, do we know?
Oh, that's for the awards themselves.
For the awards themselves, you just simply upload your work, which is made easier by this new website we have, and then the current updates. Once you're on that site, you're done. You are included in the competition, and plus you've now got a site that you can use as a website for your work. Mm-hmm. And the only deadline we have is there's a date in December. It might be the 31st, where it's the cutoff. After that, your current work will not be considered in that year's judging.
Right, and so the online portfolio can support not just visual art, but I know that
all disciplines.
There's been moves to really make it more friendly to visual art and music
and literary artists. Yes,
literary arts and music.
Right.
Thank you very much. Do we have another question? Opening up the phones, press *6 to unmute yourself. Okay. Talk a little bit more about where Baker fits into other opportunities for artists, because I know we have several grants programs in this town that really make Baltimore distinct from other cities of its size. And there are, while funding for the arts and funding for individual artists is always needed, there are a few opportunities that in Baltimore.
Right, so obviously the State Arts Council has been giving small grants to artists across the state for years, so there's always that opportunity. And then the Sondheim Prize was started, I think, the year before Baker launched its website. That's in the visual arts, a $25,000 prize. And more recently, we have the Rubies grants administered by the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance, who also administers the Baker Artist Awards. Mm-hmm. But the Rubies are for project grants for artists, and so those are all available. Do you know of any others?
Those are the ones that I can think of for individual artists
right.
off the top of my off the top of my head, and then obviously there are some private funders that support arts nonprofits.
Right.
But there are opportunities out there. I'm going to turn back to the phones. If anybody has a question, press *6 to unmute yourself. So, as you think of the current strength and capacity of Baltimore's arts universe, both in terms of the individual artists producing work and arts nonprofits, what role do you think funders, foundation funders in particular, can play to further strengthen that universe?
Well, I think each foundation has its own point of view, and clearly they're all necessary in this universe. Others, we have chosen not to support arts education at this point. We just don't have the funds to do it equitably or at any scale, but other people think that's the prime place where they should put their monies, because these are the audiences of the future. For us, it's a long time span, and they won't get around to being the audience for a while. So we're trying to keep these organizations alive for now and strong. Other people have thought about community development in terms of the arts, mm-hmm. or are using it in terms of social justice. We're really focused on the arts for the art's sake, and improving the quality of the arts and the outreach of the arts and the sustainability of the arts here in this city. Mm-hmm. So do you have a point of view on this? Because you have arts funds that you also...
Baltimore Community Foundation has a very small arts and culture fund that's, the funds are given out on a discretionary basis each year, and they tend to be small grants. And I think that partnering with the Baker Fund and wanting to complement the work that you're doing in some small way, we have in recent years shifted the focus of the BCF Arts and Culture Fund to really focus on issues of social justice and of using the arts as a tool for community organizing, mm-hmm. for amplification of youth voice, for resident engagement around the issues that matter to different communities. So, if I had a wish, it would be that that both of the sources of funds to go to artists and arts organizations mm-hmm. for these various purposes could be really expanded. We have about 1 minute left in our call, so if somebody wants to press *6 to ask a question or to submit a question on Facebook or Twitter, we are open to that. And just wrapping up very quickly in the time that we have left, I'm wondering, you are not only a funder, and you've not only been director of the Baker Fund for a long time, but you yourself are a patron and a fan of the arts.
Indeed.
What advice would you give to an artist out there who is seeking to make her work known to the wider community, to really get her work out there and make her mark?
There are many ways, of course. Having lots of friends helps. But I think putting your work up on the Baker Artist Awards portfolio site is a huge deal, because you get huge exposure, and you could be curators from around the world, people in academia, people from the creative industries are all looking at that site, and you don't know when you're going to get a phone call from that kind of person, or a person who wants to buy your work and purchase what you're doing. So I can't think of a more cost-effective way to get your name and your work out there before people, no matter what discipline you're following.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you very much, Melissa. We're coming up to the end of our 20-minute update. Thank you again to our Civic Leadership Fund donors for making all of this possible. And thank you, all of you on the line today and watching on Facebook, for taking the time to learn a little bit more about the William G. Baker Jr. Memorial Fund and the Baker Artist Awards. Now, we'll be back next month on October 20th at 9 a.m. for a conversation about education advocacy at the state level and the forthcoming recommendations of what's known as the Kirwan Commission. So with that, I would like to thank my colleague, Melissa Warlow. It was great talking to you. Thank you all, and have a great day.